Hello everyone. My individual research project is focused on the idea of integrating learning and development initiatives in retail environments, and how they could potentially shift American fast fashion consumer attitudes towards ethical production. The problem is simple. Currently, the fast fashion industry survives on the unethical exploitation of garment workers. Production of clothing comes at a high human cost in the form of low wages, hazardous working conditions, abusive production standards, and even the preventable death of workers. While this is a problem that should be fixed from a simple moral perspective, fashion brands need to step up and work towards creating more ethical standards if they want to survive in the future marketplace. Consumers are becoming increasingly focused on ethical issues and are supporting brands that align with their values, especially coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. So my thesis question is this: can learning and development function as a way to connect American consumers to the human cost of mass market fashion and, in turn, shift consumer attitudes towards ethical production? Essentially, I want to explore the intricacies of teaching customers about ethical production standards, if it can change consumer perceptions, influence future buying habits, and whether or not it can prove to be beneficial to the brand. The goal with this research is to determine both the viability of learning and development integration from the brand's perspective, and if it can have a greater effect on the larger American fast fashion market. The first research methodology I'm going to employ will be casual research to gauge whether or not my thesis is correct, looking at the cause and effect relationship between learning and consumer attitudes, with learning initiatives acting as the independent variable and consumer attitudes acting as the dependent variable. The basis of my further research is dependent on this relationship, therefore establishing a connection between the two is critical. This research will be highly dependent on sociological and psychological fields in order to determine how much value American culture places on ethical production in fashion. For my second methodology, I'd like to look at historical data, existing companies, and potential case studies that relate to my research. This will predominantly involve researching financial metrics and learning methods that are already being employed by companies in the industry, like at Reformation and Everlane. In addition, I'd like to look at potential past instances of teaching being implemented in retail environments, whether it's through in-store events, online marketing, or one-on-one interactions with associates. The goal with this method is to establish if any other brands have tried implementing learning and development in their stores and what the potential outcome was. My final and primary research methodology comes in the form of interviews and surveys. Given that there is very little existing research on my topic, my goal is to create a body of research. This will be done in the form of interviews with employees at different levels in companies like Veja that are already implementing learning initiatives into their corporate strategy. I'd like to speak with corporate employees, store and district managers, and retail associates to ascertain whether or not learning and development initiatives are financially and operationally viable. In addition to these interviews, I'd like to speak with and survey customers to get a better idea of the accuracy of my thesis. I'd like to do interviews with clients of brands that work to educate their guests to see if there's any correlation between the teaching, their purchasing habits, and their perceptions of ethical production standards. If possible, I'd also like to set up a focus group in an attempt to gather primary data on my topic. This would involve gathering a group of fast fashion consumers and giving them a survey before showing them an educational video or presentation on ethical fashion production, and then surveying them after to see if their opinions have changed. To summarize, this research project aims to establish the viability and efficacy of integrating learning and development into retail environments, and whether or not they could alter existing customer attitudes towards ethical production. Currently, the fashion industry is built on the exploitation of garment workers to produce clothing quickly, cheaply, and most importantly, unethically. The industry has a responsibility for these unethical practices, and companies that work to make the situation right could have a first mover advantage in the values-based marketplace that is emerging. My goal is to ascertain whether or not learning can be a part of the solution or not. Thank you very much.